this is an absolutely lovely question. So the reason why this question is so lovely is because you have x squared and it is being multiplied by cosine to the fourth x. And if you just look in front of this cosine, you notice that x squared, that is not a constant coefficient. That thing is not going to be taken along. We have a variable times a variable. So we need to go into our product rule. So going into the product rule, our first function is going to be x squared. Now, our second function, anytime we see this trig function followed by an exponent, we immediately rewrite that. So that is going to be parentheses cosine x to the fourth power. All right, so now we got to figure out these derivatives. So first function's derivative is 2x, second function's derivative. Here you'll notice that we have parentheses to a power. So that tells us that we can use our general power rule. All right, so we bring down the 4, keep the inside fixed at cosine x for now, subtract 1 to get 3, and then multiply by the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine x. Now, you don't necessarily have to move the sign to the front, but you do want to combine this 4 and this negative, those coefficients together. So that will give you that our second function's derivative is negative 4 cosine x to the third sine x. All right, now I always like to be really clear about what I'm actually multiplying together here in the product rule. So I have my first function and its respective derivative. Second function is listed here, and then the second function's derivative is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug into the product rule second function times the derivative of the first. So y prime will look like cosine x to the fourth times 2x plus, and then our first times the derivative of the second. So x squared times negative 4 cosine x to the third sine x. All right, now I always like to take a moment and ask myself, is there anything that I can bring out here? So remember that this plus sign splits us up into two separate boxes. And we look at those two boxes and we ask ourselves, is there a greatest common factor? Now remember, and leave yourself a little line here, the greatest common factor, GCF, that is your smallest exponent. So you see here that cosine x to the fourth is in this box, but we have a cosine x to the third in the second box. So our GCF is not going to be cosine x to the fourth, it's going to be cosine x to the third, the smaller exponent. All right, so we have that we can bring out. And the next part is important to notice. You'll notice you have an x and you also have an x squared. So we have x to the first, x squared, so we can bring out an x. And you'll also notice that you have a 2 and a 4. They have a GCF of 2. So our total GCF that we can bring out here, factoring out our GCF, is going to be 2x cosine x to the third power. All right, so let's see what we are going to be left over with when we take out that GCF. So remember that when you take out the GCF, you are dividing this term by the 2x cosine x to the third. All right, so let's just focus on that term for now. We see that the 2x cancels out. And then here you have cosine x to the fourth over cosine x to the third. So if you had x to the fourth over x to the third, you would subtract your exponents, you would get x to the first. So the same thing is true here. I have cosine x to the fourth over cosine x to the third. Subtracting our exponents, we are just going to be left over with a cosine. So we will have cosine x left over. Then we have plus. Now, for the second term, we have to do the same little rigmarole. We have to say divided by 2x parentheses cosine x to the third. All right, now let's deal with the easiest part probably first. We see that the cosine x to the third, cosine x to the third is going to cancel. We see here that we have a negative 4 divided by 2, so that is going to become a negative 2. And then we have an x squared over x, so that's going to become just x to the first when we cancel or subtract our exponents. So from this second term, what we are left with is x times 2. So that's a negative 2x, and then we also have the sine x. Okay, and if you look inside these brackets, there's nothing really to combine, so you can just leave this as cosine x minus 2x sine x. And then over here, you have your GCF of 2x. You could continue to write it with the parentheses, or a more elegant way might be to have the little cosine cubed x. And that is our y prime. But I really want you to get into the habit of factoring out that GCF, because eventually we're going to have to set all this equal to 0 and solve.